Hey everybody, this is Harvey Sunny Wasserman back with you all for the 261st Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. We live in a world where there is just so much to talk about, and we've got a full boat today. We're starting with 44 people here, and I want to thank Steve Caruso, our engineer, Mike Hirsch, MYLA RESON co-hosts. And I want to start with something positive, which is rooftop solar. We're going to jump to Ron Leonard real quick, and then we're going to talk about the No Kings, No Nukes, No War marches that next Saturday. We will not be meeting before the next one. I want to go into that. I want to talk also about what happens after. This will be number three. Hopefully, there will be no COINTEL infiltration, violence, stuff like that. And we hope to get, maybe 10 million people. But then what do we do after that? Let's have a discussion on that. We're also going to talk about election protection. Trump is pushing the SAVE Act, which is meant to destroy democracy. And we got some bad readings today from the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court on the front page of the New York Times. They're hinting that they're going to allow some serious restrictions on mail-in voting. About that stuff, we have John Brakey from Arizona, who's one of the great pioneers of election protection and involved in tremendous court battles in Arizona, among other things. We also have in the second hour, at the top of the second hour, and Brian Foster is on to discuss this with us, but we have TATANKA BRICCA, a very close personal friend of Dolores HUERTA and CESAR CHAVEZ. And we want to get to some of the real nitty-gritty on the breaking news on Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, who's been on these calls, by the way. And Tatanka is known for decades, and some questions have been raised, and we want to talk about that. And then the second half hour of the second hour, we're going to talk about the news media, the destruction of CBS, the conversion of CBS into Fox 2, and then the question of does it matter? Can we, with the ocean of the internet now, get around the classic, as they say, legacy media, and create a whole new media? And of course, we have Trump personally attacking reporters now. This is without precedent. I mean, it's truly astounding to see this happening. So Dave Saltman will join us in the second half hour of the second hour. But this is an astonishing time in history. And I do want to start with something positive, which is rooftop, or rather balcony solar. We have the news today that Trump is attempting to kill and may actually have succeeded in killing a major wind farm in the Northeast, getting them to take their money and invest it in fossil fuels. And we have this going on in Ohio where they're doing everything they can to literally kill wind and solar power in the state of Ohio. As someone who was in the wind business for a while in Ohio, I'm prepared to talk about that. But let's get the good news. Ron Leonard, we understand that balcony solar is booming ahead in the United States. It's now endorsed by the state governments of Utah and Virginia. It's up for fight in California, and MYLA RESON, the producer of California Solartopia, and I will be discussing the details of that with Scott Wiener, state senator in California, who's running for Nancy Pelosi's congressional seat, who has sponsored a balcony solar bill in California. Ron Leonard, and listen, we're all in, many of us are in different states. We're all on this call, a great group of activists. This is something we're winning. And Ron Leonard, can you tell us really quickly what's going on with balcony solar and why it's so important?
Well, we are seeing that there is a revolution. Now, the revolution is all of us are getting charged too much for the commodity, dirty electricity we're forced to buy every day. Now, what is the way out? Well, the way out is that you and I can put solar on our backyard, on our balcony, on our garage. We can actually democratize the process of getting electricity. And balcony solar is sort of a European invention, mostly Germany, where they got the great idea is that solar panels are really cheap. They're really, really cheap. And the only problem is solar power is, from panels is DC and your house is AC. Well, there's this little device called an inverter, and they have them small enough now that they go on the back of your solar panel. So you get AC out of the solar panel and you just plug it into the house. You're done. You're good. Now, there is a limitation. Logically, you don't want to put too much of this power into plugs going into your building. So they logically also limit the amount of panels you can put on your house, but it's fine. It works. It works every day. It works 24/7 because you can also hook up a battery and you can have power at night when those lights go out when you don't like it. So here we go. We can reduce our costs and clean up our act, unlike the utilities.
Yes, and this is really cool because at my house here in LA, I signed a contract to solarize the whole premise. It was going to be about 30, 40 grand. That was back when we had tax credits, and it made a lot of sense. Then Gavin Newsom, not Donald Trump, well, in conjunction with Donald Trump, Gavin Newsom killed the rooftop solar industry in California. That's a whole other story, which you've heard from me before, but there is no greater enemy of the renewable energy industry than Gavin Newsom. But now, this bill 868 in front of the California legislature, which passed unanimously through one committee, you can just buy a couple of panels, which I will do, and plug them into the house. Now, instead of putting them on the roof, I'm going to put however many solar panels I buy on top of my trash cans
There you
because
go.
my trash cans face the sun. So that'll be my new solar array. It'll be a hybrid of solar and trash. But there you go.
That's
So Ron
one of
Leonard,
the
you've been a
work.
pioneer. How much can I expect to pay for a couple of solar panels that'll do the job here?
Well, the rationale to do this is to buy the cheapest price per watt, and usually it's below 50 cents per watt. But functionally, you can also choose to buy the biggest practical solar panels, which are in the 500-watt per panel range. So you buy two of those, you get a kilowatt worth of energy, and Bob's your uncle. You're good to go.
Yeah. So listen, when I'm ready to buy, I'll call you. And we've got some legal stuff to get through, but as soon as we do. And then, of course, instead of buying a car, I mean, instead of buying a battery, I could actually finally get rid of my 2010 Toyota Corolla and go out and find an electric car, a used electric car, which are pretty cheap these days, and then use that for the battery, correct?
That's a bargain because a lot of these electric vehicles have two-way charging, and you can charge your car up, and if the lights go out, your car can power your house. So
There you go.
away you go.
All right, so listen, everybody. Ron Leonard, Ron, tell people how to get all of you. But in your now two state legislatures have passed this, Virginia and Utah, and but Myla and I are going to have Scott Wiener on in a week and a half. Myla, what's happening in California with this?
Well, as you said, the Scott Wiener's legislation to bypass all the red tape and allow people to have their own solar energy, balcony solar, passed the state Senate Energy Committee a few days ago, and it has to go through a few more steps, but it passed unanimously from the committee. And there are about 20 other states, as you said. Utah was the first, and over 20 states now have basically crafted legislation based on what Utah achieved. Virginia, as you said, just passed something this month.
Right.
But I also wanted to mention that, recently there was a scare. Trump threatened to shut off the power grid in Iran, and Iran countered by saying, if you do that, we're going to attack the power grid in the United States, all of the various, and sent a map of the grids that they already had, and they knew where they could attack. So they were saying, if you do this, we'll respond. And it just leads me to saying, well, the time is here for distributed energy to make the power grids less susceptible. If people have distributed energy, they have their own little system, then we're not as vulnerable. And it also leads me to think about Cuba. Cuba just had a major blackout in Havana, I think, too. They've restored energy, but they were worried about having insulin for people who are diabetic to treat diabetes, and they were really worried about people dying. And Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico kind of came to the rescue. But I think worldwide, you're going to see people start looking at distributed energy, which is not as vulnerable, and
Right.
and people having their own, like in
Right.
the solar punk in Africa. It could be worldwide.
That's correct. Now, of course, I want to make a slight adjustment, and it's being called balcony solar, but we don't have a balcony. So in my house, it's going to be trash can solar because the panels
Backyard solar.
backyard solar, whatever you want. But and I got to point out that Castro, when he was running Cuba, blew hundreds of millions of dollars starting to build two nuclear plants.
Right.
And if he had taken that money instead and gone solar, Cuba would not be in this predicament. And it's only a hop, skip, and a jump also before Iran starts threatening our nuclear power plants. And well, a single drone can take on a nuclear plant. And we're seeing this in Ukraine already, where Putin, who is the big winner, by the way, in the Iran war, already hundreds of millions of dollars Putin has profited from the closing of the Straits of Hormuz, which he helped the Iranians to do. And that's the real hidden issue about the war in Iran. There is a big winner in the war in Iran, and it is Russia. So, as Trump says, Russia, Russia, Russia. On the front page of the Times today, Trump is killing the big wind power off the East Coast, but that's not happening in Europe. Did you want to throw anything else, Ron Leonard, before we move on?
Because we have just sort of figured out something very important here in that grids are vulnerable, and we really don't want to be vulnerable. And one of the ways to fix that is to have diverse things that are producing clean energy on the grid. And one of the fastest and most easily installed is solar. And factually, the cheapest to install is solar. So if you really want to have a secure grid, the smartest thing to do is to look at the grid, do a grid study like my friend Richard Perez does all over the world, and figure out, if we have a grid and it needs to produce energy 24/7, and it works this way in that state, in New York State, it's a confined state grid. California goes beyond the state of California for the grid size. We can do this now. One, because it's cheaper, and two, because it's faster to install.
Right, exactly. So when I finally get the go ahead, when we get this bill 868 through the California legislature, which we're trying to do in part with our California Solartopia show, I will go back and Ron, you'll tell me where I'll buy the solar panel. I stick them on my trash can. I'll put the plug in the house, and my electric rates will drop 20, 30, 40%. So thank you for that very
And
much.
you'll be one of the people that saves the grid, like they did in
There you go.
California when it went to 100 degrees. The 2 million people who had solar on their roof saved the California grid.
Absolutely. Once again, we're joined by the great Carl Grossman, a major expert in energy on this, also by Ray McClendon from Georgia. We're going to switch gears now with Ray and John Brakey, as you all know, we have the No Kings Day march coming on, which is for us, no kings, no nukes, no war. And it will be Saturday, the 28th. This is the third one, as we all know. Last time we got up to 7 million. There's this rule of thumb that came somewhere. And we're joined on the call, by the way, by a co-organizer of some of the great marches. Kathy Wolf is with us from New England, who helped organize the big marches at the Seabrook nuclear plants in the 1970s. But we expect, millions of people again to come out for No King's Day. We hope that the Trump COINTELPRO operation will not. So far, we had two major gatherings worldwide that were nonviolent. We are all committed to keeping them nonviolent. We don't want to give Trump an excuse for martial law. Let's presume that the rallies come off over the weekend, that we get to 10 million. What comes next?
Well, the secret sauce is Saturday. It's supposed to be sunny in New York. So we're going to have 12 million people out there, aren't we, Harvey? That's going to be the way to do it. Solar and protest.
Yes. So, but the question then we want to think about is what comes next. Ray McClendon, you're a great organizer in Atlanta. We're going to talk about election protection in a couple of minutes, but anybody wants to speak on the upcoming marches, I think we can put up, Steve, maybe a website or two where people can find their local march. I'm going to keep my carbon footprint low. I'm going to find a march that I can walk to, and I think there will be one. I think most of us will be able to do that on Saturday. But then the question is, what comes next? Ray McClendon, you're in Atlanta. John Brakey, you're in Arizona. Let's start with Ray. Ray, what's going to happen on No King's Day, and what's going to happen on No Kings, No Nukes, No War, and then what's going to happen the day after?
Well, I'm not one of the principal organizers on any of the No King's Day events here in Metro Atlanta or in Georgia, but I can speak to what comes next, and what will come next for us is that we have coming up on May 19th the primaries in Georgia. That's going to be very significant for a number of reasons. Number one, we have all of the various what we call constitutional offices will be up for re-election here in Georgia, starting with the governor. The governor's race is already very close. We have several interests on the Democratic side that are polling very well, starting with former mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, as well as a former labor commissioner in DeKalb County, our second largest county CEO, Michael Thurman, are polling very well. The great thing that's going on now is that in that race, Burt Jones is the candidate of choice for Trump, and he's getting all he can handle from a newcomer who is a billionaire, Jackson, who is we believe running a very strong campaign where they're going at each other. So they are doing negative ads against one another, and it's we're happy for that. We love to see them fight like that. And of course, Ossoff will be on the ballot. He won't have any real strong competition in the primary, but we expect the fireworks to really begin after the Republicans decide who will be his candidate, opposition going into November. So that'll be a big race.
Yeah. So the question then becomes, and we'll segue with this and join the two topics, what comes after No King's Day? How do we protect the elections? In California, we have this insane situation. We have a jungle primary in California where it's not done by party. The top two, whether they're Republican or Democrat, go on the ballot. We have two Republicans running and 7 or 8 or 9, God knows how many Democrats. So it's conceivable that both candidates that emerge from this jungle primary could be Republicans. And one of the Republicans he's a sheriff of somewhere, and he has just confiscated 1 million ballots. This is a candidate, a Republican candidate for governor in a jungle primary in the biggest state in the union, has confiscated 1 million ballots. I mean, John Brakey, does this sound familiar to you in Arizona?
John's not here yet.
Oh, okay. John's not with us. Yes. MYLA RESON or somebody from California, do you want to comment on this? I mean, it's staggering. And anybody that wants to tell us what's going to happen after the no kings, no nukes, no war marches, I'd like to know. Do we go to a general strike? We can't keep doing these no King's Day marches. 3 is good, or we can keep doing them, and they're going to keep building in numbers. We know that. We hope we get over 10 million this coming weekend. And again, we're nonpartisan. The no kings, no nukes, no war marches are nonpartisan. But nonetheless, what happens next? Let's pray there's no violence. Let's pray that they come off well and that we get huge turnouts. But the bottom line is what's going to come next. And one of the things that's most critical is election protection. As I say, we've got a candidate in California that's just confiscated 1 million ballots. So what are we going to do about that? We have 83 people online. If anybody wants to pipe in, that's great.
So I can pipe in.
Please, MYLA, go ahead.
Sure. I believe that there are some unions who are actually organizing for a general strike, possibly next year in May. But it's going to take a lot of organizing to pull off a successful general strike. In the meantime, I agree with you. I think the most important thing is to protect these upcoming elections at the end of the year. And that's going to take a lot of work because the people who are in power and worried about losing power are going to use every trick in the book, They'll do everything they can to hold on to power. And I think that Ruth Ben-Ghiat, who has studied authoritarians and what they do when they're threatened, has issued some really pretty grave warnings about how authoritarian regimes respond when they are about to lose power, and that it's not a pretty picture. Maybe we can get her on to talk about it. I think
yes, that's a great idea. John Brakey, you're in Arizona. You're confronting. John Brakey has joined us.
It's just coming in now.
Yeah, I just joined in now. We have 86 people. I forgot he wasn't with us. We have 86 people with us. And the other thing we have to discuss here, everyone, and John Steiner, I know you've been on this case, is the SAVE Act. Now, if you look at the parts of the SAVE Act that Trump is putting forward, he wants to call it the Save America Act, but it's clearly designed to gut the electoral system. And the other thing is, you see Carville, you see all these other Democratic Party mucky mucks, the Democratic Party billionaires, or at least millionaires, and they're all so confident that the Democrats are going to sweep the fall elections. But if you put in place the things that Trump wants to put in place in the SAVE Act, there's no way that the Democrats are going to carry the fall election. And we also have to we are 100% sure that as November rolls around, there will be a tsunami of cash coming from the billionaires who own and operate this country. I mean, there's about 10 people, Tim Cook, Bezos, Musk, Peter Thiel, the 2 guys from Google. I mean, you can name them on two hands, the people that will put in as much money as it takes to sweep the November elections. Much as we think that the popular sentiment has turned against Trump, that's how much money is going to pour in. We have a system of $1, 1 vote. Mark Zuckerberg Zuckerberg and so on. So John Brakey, you've just joined us. What is happening in Arizona with the election protection? Do you expect to have any kind of fair election in November in Arizona?
It's up in the air. It really, really is. Is that we're very, very close to maybe getting 1 to 2 counties to use ABE, because we just went through an election in Pima County that was $2.67 billion over 20 years. It was the RTA again, and I have found serious problems. And we're meeting with them tomorrow, me and Ken Bennett with the Board of Supervisors, because we want them to prove that this election was real, and we can do it very quickly. And yeah, I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned about what's happening in California right now at Riverside. That's an incredible story where the sheriff who's running for governor, who went in and took 665,000 ballots out.
Yeah. Can you imagine that? Here's a guy running for governor. He's the sheriff in a county. There he is. And
Yeah.
he seizes 650,000 ballots. Now, because we have a jungle primary, he could be a nominee and for governor. Well, what's he going to do with those ballots? Is he going to sit at home and mark each one with his name and turn them in? And John, you've been fighting this fight in Arizona. You say it's up in the air. That's not reassuring.
It isn't. You're exactly right, because they refuse to go ahead and implement what Ray has or I have or clear ballot. They want elections that are secret and verifiable. They want to tell you that they know the election was done because they ran a logic and accuracy test, which only proves it's working right at that moment. It's ridiculous. I mean, we're in the digital age. We have a hybrid system. We got hand-marked paper ballots. We got ballot images. That's redundancy. And how long would it take? I could take an election of 600,000 people. In 3 minutes, I can create one sheet that has everything hyperlinked. And then I can hyperlink in 40 minutes, 340 precincts, and have those ready for picking a few to audit. That's what we want to do at Pima County. So it's a big showdown.
Just to clarify for everybody, John Brakey is a pioneer of a system where every ballot is paper. They're all hand marked. The ballots go into the election board. They are scanned, digitally scanned, and then counted off the scan, and then they can be rechecked by hand. We have 89 people with us. We're being joined now by CHRISIAN NUNEZ from Christian, if you want to present yourself, you have an announcement to make. But and then we had a bunch of hands. But let me call on Christian first, please, and then we'll go to the hands. Christian, you wanted to make an announcement. It's great to have you with us.
It's actually nice to see your faces again. I haven't seen you all in a while, so it's good to see everyone.
It's always good to have you.
Yeah. So thanks to Mike for inviting me. I wanted to just give everyone an announcement on my new venture and where I'm at now, and invite everyone out to our virtual kickoff. I finished with now in August 2025, and now I just started my own nonprofit. It's called Saving Ourselves Foundation, Incorporated. And ideally, we exist to make sure that women and children are free from violence and exploitation and harm in the communities. But we're looking at this in multiple different ways. We're really a community-led, survivor-led program that's working on gender-based violence and how we look at it from a holistic, systemic way of looking at how to prevent this violence. There are lots of gender-based violence organizations out there, and we're not trying to replace them, but we're definitely trying to fill the gaps. So one thing that we definitely do is we look at this from a proactive, preventative approach, starting with early intervention. We look at it as how do we look at policy on all levels that need to be in place to support communities and survivors, so that they are really, truly getting justice and equity in their work. And we look at this from a tech facilitated approach and how we do our work as well, looking at the emerging threat of technology and technology facilitated BD. And everything we do is very evidence-based and rooted in that evidence-based work that we do. I don't know if many of you know, but I've been a licensed clinical social worker, therapist, trauma therapist for over 20 something years. And so before I started now, I had my own practice doing that work. And now I I'm actually in my doctoral program, but I'm still working on policy and change in those areas. So we're really looking forward to looking at how we incorporate justice and civic engagement into all the initiatives we do and preparing people to be more educated. So also when they're going out to vote, they know how these candidates are, how they're responding, how they're endorsing or not endorsing important laws that protect women and children. And I would say, from thinking of this time right now, what we're seeing happen with so many, from Epstein to now we're hearing about the recent thing with Chavez, and then other famous people who have presented with these issues. We just want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to represent everyone and provide like a really sound systemic approach and solution to this. So we're going to be having our virtual kickoff on Wednesday, March 25th at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll have some panelists who have very expertise.
Okay.
And we'll have a panel, and our panel is called It's Bigger Than Epstein, Deconstructing the Epstein Files and the Community Solutions We Need. And so you have a great panelist of people and experts on there.
Okay.
And
Can you put the link to that,
I'm
please?
going to put it in the chat.
And
So
Yeah,
I want to let you know that at the top of the hour, at 3 o'clock Pacific, 6 Eastern, we're going to jump with TATANKA BRICCA and talk specifically about the CESAR Chavez Dolores
yes,
Huerta situation. So if you want to stick with us for that, because TATANKA is a lifelong friend of theirs. And then I want to return beforehand to Ray McClendon to talk about election protection in Georgia, where it's a huge issue. Christian, it's great to have you back with us. Can
thank
you
you
put the
so much.
detail? Can you put the
Huh?
detail of
I'm
your
going to type it
upcoming?
in chat right now. And so I'll type in the link to the webinar and the flyer, and then my website and everything like that. So if anybody has any questions or interested in getting involved, especially in our AI and Justice and Harms program. Yep, thank you for sharing that.
There it is.
Um,
Yes, Steve, you do a great job with this, and really, Christian, it's great to have you with us. And if you can stick with us, we're going to take a pretty deep dive into this at the top of the hour with
okay, wonderful. Okay, thank you
Tatanka
so
Bricca.
much.
Thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
everybody. Take a look at that. Christian, it's really an honor to have you back with us, and we're grateful. Let's return for the time being now, because I know Ray usually has to leave, on election protection in another state, which is Georgia, where it's been, a huge issue. Ray, how confident are we've heard John Brakey tell us that swing state Arizona election protection is going to be up for grabs, up in the air. We have more than 90 people with us. What do you think is going to happen in Georgia?
Well, what's happening in California and Arizona started in Fulton County, Georgia, with the FBI seizing all of the ballots from the 2020 presidential election. We fully expect that that is simply a precursor, not about whether or not Trump lost the 2020 election. That was debunked multiple times through the courts. What this is about is taking the ballots and gaining the insight and information from those ballots toward the 2026 elections, and a pretext for being able to do what we anticipate will be some type of seizing of the ballot or poll intimidation that will be based upon precincts, particularly those precincts where there are high African American and Hispanic American voter turnout, and they'll have that. They want to get that information from the ballot information that they've seized. Fulton County, of course, has the highest number of Black voters in the state of Georgia. So we anticipate that. As I mentioned last week, one of the things that we are already doing is beginning to game out what some of the potential tactics that this administration will likely employ. Election protection is a critical part of that. We're working with folks like Andrea Miller at the Center for Common Ground, Black Voters Matter, and others to come up with a coordinated process for being able to have rapid response teams available in key jurisdictions across the state where we anticipate vote intimidation will occur. This is a multi-pronged effort that is going on, not just from the federal government, but we're also in our legislative session for the state of Georgia right now. And there are more voter suppression bills that are being debated as we speak. We've got another week with the state legislative session, and they are looking to give more power to the state election board, which is pro-MAGA. Many of you will recall that Trump called out the MAGA members of the Georgia election board from one of his campaign events by name because of the work they were doing on his behalf, and it's only gotten worse. The legislation that is being pushed through right now would in addition to giving the election board more power, strip some of the power from the Secretary of State's office, even though it's Republican controlled. At least they have been not falling in line with the Trump administration. And in fact, Georgia is one of the states that has been sued by the Justice Department to get the information on our voter rolls. So as more control goes over to the state election board, we anticipate that they'll have easier access to information. So we're battling on multiple fronts here. It's going to continue, but our coalition is strong, and we're going to put up a good fight.
Well, if you will put in the chat or in the chat or wherever how people can get in touch with you, we need to have coordination on election protection. We are, of course, nonpartisan, but we want to, and thus we want to make sure everybody has the right to vote and that it's protected. And Charlie Lindahl, you've had your hand. You're from Texas. What is happening? We've had Georgia, Arizona directly, and California directly mentioned here. What's happening in Texas in terms of election protection? Steve Caruso, you had your hand up. I know you dropped it, but if you want to speak up, please do. Charlie Lindahl, what's happening with election protection in Texas?
Okay, first of all, I'd like to mention, pay attention to Texas. We've been talking about flipping blue forever, and we have a very dynamic chair. His name is Kendall Scudder, and I put that in the chat. He's 36 years old. He, in the first 6 months of his tenure, he wiped out the Texas Democratic debt. We were at 400,000. He put it down to zero in 6 months. And
Okay,
the other
so
thing
what
is,
are we doing to protect the elections in Texas? We know, again, we're nonpartisan, but so what is going to happen? We know we have two very, very closely watched national scale races in Texas for the U.S. Senate and the governor. What is happening to protect the vote in Texas?
couple of things. Number one is Houston particularly is very strong and has many different programs, including things like giving rides to the polls and making sure that people are registered to vote. Beto O'Rourke has a program called We the People that goes out to every single campus in the state of Texas to register students. And that is a very important factor in what we're doing here. Also, if you look at Tallarico, who's our Senate candidate, you will see a lot about protecting election integrity. The last thing I'll mention is, and I'm inviting people I've been an election judge for 10 years, and we are always looking for people to do the elections. And when somebody says, "Hey, it's rigged," I go, "Not in my precinct." I am there from 6 in the morning till 9 at night, and I guarantee you there's no ballot stuffing going on and no problems with doing the vote. So I encourage people to volunteer for the elections. And by the way, we get $14 an hour for for both the clerks and the judges. So the fact that we have a really enormous inflection of judge officials to help watch the elections, I think is an important piece.
Boy, is it ever. Charlie, that's great. So you need to be in touch with Brakey and Ray McClendon. I've got Camilla Reese and John Steiner on. We had in 24 a US grassroots.org website. We're going to have to discuss, the three of us, whether we're going to revive it and make it, because we do need an election protection website. If anybody has devoted election protection websites to put the links in, that would be great. Charlie, make sure you're in touch with us. Put your contacts in the chat. Mickey Leader wants to speak to this. Go ahead, Mickey, please.
So, thank you.
Hi,
Thank you, Charlie.
how are you,
Good.
everyone?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Okay, I just wanted to let you know I'm a member of our Election Protection Committee in New York State. That primarily the most people are on it from Westchester. And
Okay.
as all of you, I'm sure, are aware, every single state controls their own election procedures. So no one group from any different district in any different state is good for anybody else. But what we're finding is that the fact that it was going to cost over $250 million to buy the DSNS or the ESNS machines that are being touted, we all know that those can be manipulated.
Right.
And we all know that the majority of Western countries, democratic countries, use paper and pencil. It's the only thing that cannot be manipulated. You can count
Right.
it. All of the things that come from those electric counting machines, they're not really viable.
Right.
The
And we learned
receipts,
that in Ohio 2004, where the chairman of the committee to re-elect Bush also owned the election machines, the
right, right.
electronic machines. And now we're seeing that again this year happening again. We have, John Brakey is the great pioneer of the idea that every ballot needs to be paper, and then we
Right.
use a digital scanner to do the initial vote count, and then we can back it up with paper ballots. It's not rocket science. But the SAVE Act is aimed at, as Ray McClendon is well aware, and then we know in Texas, is aimed at the turnout, at discouraging people from voting. And my understanding from the Times today, the New York Times, is that the Supreme Court now is inclined to allow states to turn down ballots that don't arrive on election day.
Right.
And that means that as they can go in, Trump can go in or whoever, DeJoy and Louis DeJoy, and destroy the Postal Service so that ballots take 2-3 weeks, a month to arrive and then aren't counted.
Well, let me just point why I wanted to talk.
Go for
I've
it,
been
please.
on
Take it
this.
now. Go ahead.
Okay. I've been on this committee. I didn't know a damn thing about election protection and integrity. Who would have thought that anybody could screw it up? And I got involved basically because I'm supporting a young woman for U.S.
Okay,
Congress.
Nikki, just tell us what's going on
Okay.
with election protection.
Okay. We have in the state assembly 6 different bills that address all of the things that we have been talking about. And we cannot get co-signers in the assembly from the Democrats in New York State to sign on so that it can go on the budget. Our Congressman Lawler has one of the shakiest elections coming up, but it won't happen if we can't get these things to be protected. You have to protect the fact that you need paper ballots. You have to protect that the people who already committed to buy the machines can get their money back. It's there for the next couple of weeks and they can get refunded, because they don't need, in this day and age with this kind of horrible problems with money, to spend the voters' money when all they need is paper ballots. You
Okay,
don't need people who delay or screw up and mislead the voters in a particular district and send them all over creation, and then they won't accept their votes on
exactly right.
election day. I
Right.
have all of them that I can send to you.
Yes.
Please,
Well, please
you
put them in the
post
chat.
them, please, because some of them may in fact apply to some of the 50 states. But for New York State, I'm going to also ask, I have to ask PDA, we need to make phone calls for Beth Davidson,
Okay. Okay.
who is
Okay. No,
running
we can't.
against him.
Okay, we can't promote a candidate here, but
Okay.
Mickey, we do appreciate. But now we've got New York, Arizona, Georgia, Texas, MYLA, California. You want to speak to us from California on this? Thank you, Mickey. Thank you very much.
Oh, the other thing is Trump wants to reopen the nuclear power plant that has been closed, and he
Right.
wants, and it's going to cost 8 to 12 million dollars.
Billion, billion, billion. And listen, everybody should understand. I'm glad you raised it. Donald Trump is personally invested in nuclear power. Nuclear power is Trump power. If you support nuclear power, you support Donald Trump directly because he has direct personal investments in nuclear power and he's killing the whole regulatory regime. And Indian Point near you is part of the scheme. I think we're going to stop it, but you need to be on board. Thank you very, very much, Mickey. Stay with us. We got 96 people with us, for God's sakes. MYLA RESON, go ahead.
I
Thank
just
you.
have a thank you. I just have a quick question for Ray McClendon, and that is when you say that they now have ballot information. What kind of information? Can you be a little bit more specific about what they
The
obtained?
FBI seized all of the ballot information from the 2020 election from Fulton
So
County,
so what do you mean
which
by
includes not only names, addresses, but social security number, polling locations at which they voted. Essentially everything from private voter files.
thank you. That's all I have.
Well, that's going on all over. I mean, they're seeing Trump's people, the ICE people have been seizing ballot information. I mean, this is a national phenomenon where the MAGA forces are seizing. Well, in California, we just had this one guy seize the ballots, and allegedly from a previous election, but the information is all there. And so everybody it can be used. John Brakey, in Arizona, Charlie in Texas, the ballot information can be used to intimidate voters. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So this is what we're up against, and I hate to hear Carville and all these other smug Democrats talking about how Trump is going to get creamed in 2026. You got two things going on. You got election theft, and you have a multi-billion-dollar tsunami that's going to come pouring down, on all of us. I mean, Ray McClendon, if you had $1 billion, do you think you could buy the Senate race in Georgia? I mean, it's all there. All this money is going to become pouring, and meanwhile, they're messing as best they can with the election process. Okay, we got 10 minutes here to go before we go to Cesar Chavez. I know Steve Caruso, you had a few words you wanted to say about impeachment. Please go ahead now and speak your piece.
Yeah, how do we make impeachment work? Everybody's backing off. They don't want to impeach. It's just going to cause or whatever. Just vote to impeach without hearings. You can impeach without hearings. You say he's impeached, you're out of here. It's just like the ref at the boxing game or whatever. Proving one impeachable should not be a long, drawn out process teetering on decorum. There was no decorum when the law was broken. Okay. Congress has enough people, common sense. that they should be able to figure out that this guy needs to get out of office now. Congress has the power, shut down the House, invoke Rule 9 until it's over. Rule 9 says that at any time, any member can bring up these articles of impeachment and force a vote on it. There's no reason why this fellow should have been in office this long. Nothing else should be done. It's our sworn duty to democracy, the Constitution. If you're not enforcing the Constitution, then you are aiding and abetting. Fear of impeaching is obeying in advance. The flagrant abuse of obvious constitutional norms when is legal protocol gone too far. It's easy. It can be done quickly. And this is what Jessica Denson has been pushing. This should be on the forefront of every congressperson's tongue. If they're not doing it, then they should resign because they're not doing their job. Thank you.
Well, I'm seeing all sorts of emojis that I've never seen before floating through the screen here. So you do have some support. My understanding is that the constitutional procedure for impeachment is that a majority of the House of Representatives, a simple majority, has to vote to impeach, and then there's a trial. And 2/3 of the Senate has to vote to remove. Now, we have had Johnson was impeached in 1867 or 8 after the Civil War. He was a horrible guy and should have been Andrew Johnson. He was from Tennessee. He should have been removed. Nixon was almost impeached, but he quit before he got impeached. And then Clinton was impeached, and he should have resigned before he got impeached. Wasted everybody's time completely. We had to talk about Bill Clinton's sorry sex life for a full year. And now Trump has been impeached twice, but has not been removed. Right? Do I have that right? So if the U.S. House, a majority of the House voted to impeach, there would be a trial, and then the Senate has to vote three.
You don't have to have a trial. You don't have to have a trial.
Well, you'd want a trial.
Don't know. This is what the problem is. They sit around and they talk for hours on it. We're going to debate this. We're going to debate that. It's obvious this stuff has been done. Just like when Trump got into office in January 6th, 2025. It could have been stopped. They could have denied him the seat, just like
well, yes, but you did not. You need is it 2/3 or 3/4 of the Senate to impeach? I think it's 2/3.
2/3.
Right. But I'm right, Steve. I mean, there's only a few votes away in the U.S. House from voting an impeachment, and when you vote an impeachment, then there's a process.
No, the process is you're impeached. Get out. That's
not right.
You don't have to have a trial. You
do have to. I'm sorry.
Talk to John Boniface. He'll straighten you out.
Okay, thank you.
Impeachment is really an indictment.
It's an indictment.
The indictment then has to go before the jury, which is the Senate.
That's
the Senate
correct.
Then must vote.
Well, the Senate can choose to say you're done. You're done. We don't have to,
Yes, you're right about
that.
If you can get 2/3 of this U.S. Senate to vote to remove Donald Trump, he will be removed. Right, Ray? So, listen, but and Ray is right. He comes from the Georgia Peach State, so he knows about impeachment. So, the bottom line is an impeachment is an indictment.
I usually have one of those after dinner. It's called the after dinner impeachment.
Well, in Georgia, I think they have peach brandy, but nonetheless, and impeachment. Listen, they are less than 5 votes away in the U.S. House from having enough votes to impeach him. They've already done it twice, but they didn't have the most votes in the Senate to remove him. I think being nonpartisan, whatever, but not as a Democrat or a Republican. I'm an American citizen. I think impeachment would be entirely appropriate at this point in time. But it's different from actual removal. one of the few gripes I had with John F. Kennedy, he wrote a book called, or had a book written for him called Profiles in Courage. And one of the people that he profiled as being courageous was a U.S. senator from Nebraska. And by one vote in 1867 or 8, the U.S. Senate failed to remove Andrew Johnson. And it was because this senator from Nebraska refused to vote to remove Andrew Johnson. And thus impeachment removal failed by one vote. And Kennedy portrayed this senator as being courageous. And I vehemently disagree. I wish to God they had removed Andrew Johnson through the impeachment process. And I wish that Bill Clinton had resigned. And I wish, of course, that we had had the votes one of two times to remove Donald Trump. So if you want to have an impeachment, Steve, it's a question of the House of Representatives voting by majority to have an impeachment. To remove him is a separate process.
Right.
So
It goes to the Senate. I understand that, but to have indicting, for trial to go on for months and this, we've been down that road. We've had enough of it.
what I think you should do is run for Senate in Ohio.
Yeah, we got enough. Yeah.
Well, except then you would be up against Sherrod Brown, who actually I know and like. So that would be a problem. But our biggest problem, I think we face now is protecting the election. And Camilla and John Steiner, I do want to talk to you about this website, and let's move that. There's one other topic we're going to run to. We just have 95 people with us before we talk about CESAR Chavez and Dolores Huerta, is the airlines. This morning, I can barely say this. I fly in and out of LaGuardia a lot because I have a lot of kids in the New York area. And this morning, two pilots from Air Canada were killed landing in LaGuardia when they hit a fire truck that was just driving across the runway. How does this happen at a first world airport? How do you have an incoming airplane crashing in to a fire truck in the middle of a runway? And the two pilots are killed, for God's sakes. We know what this is about. It's about the complete deterioration of the American infrastructure because of what's happening in the White House. Where were the air traffic controllers who are supposed to be? I mean, you got to worry about the airplanes coming in and about. Now you got to worry about a fire truck driving on a landing runway. Are you kidding me? So, I'm personally invested. I just bought 2 tickets to fly into LaGuardia at the end of April because my daughter is having an operation. And, is this are the fire trucks going to be driving across the runways at all these American airports? And today, the screening process, which has been run by the TSA, is now being taken over by ICE. We're having ICE agents in American airports screening passengers who are getting on and off airplanes. Are you kidding me? I mean, it's just absolutely insane. And so I felt obliged to bring that up. And it is a woeful state of affairs for this country to be in. I'm not mad at the fire truck. I'm mad at the air. Who's running the show at LaGuardia? How does a fire truck wind up in the middle of a runway where an airplane is landing? I've never heard of this before. It's terrifying, absolutely terrifying. I fly less and less. I mean, we have a family event in Canada. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to cross a border. But now you have ICE screening people getting on airlines, and an airplane hitting a fire truck in the middle of a landing runway. This is beyond amazing to me. Anyway, listen, it's 3 o'clock Pacific time. We do have the great TATANKA BRICCA. We have an hour to go. We have 90 people with us. Thank you all for being with us. In the next hour, for the first while, we have CHRISIAN NUNEZ, I hope still with us, and we have TATANKA BRICCA, who has had a long personal relationship with Dolores Huerta. I know a lot of people want to talk about this, or at least hear about it. And then in the second half hour, we're going to talk to great David Saltman about what's happened to CBS and the major media and the future of the media in the world of the internet. And my co-host MYLA RESON is on. We're going to talk about the California Solartopia show, the Pacifica Network, and all that stuff too. So thank you everybody for staying with us. TATANKA BRICCA. I don't see any other hands. If anybody else wanted to say something on what we've gone so far. Again, we're
I
going
do.
to continue to have a major focus on election protection. But before we move ahead, John Brakey, as one of the godfathers of the election protection movement, want to give us a last word on it?
Yeah, I do. I really do. And I'm more nervous now than I've been. I've been doing this for 20 years. And I can clearly see how easy it would be to manipulate elections. Thank goodness for Ray Lutz doing the study about the thumb drive, how easy it would be do what happened in the last election, presidential election. I know building Abe that.
Well, wait, tell us what Abe is. Wait, John.
Right.
Tell us what Abe is. Nobody else knows what Abe is.
Audible ballot examination. It's an acronym, is what it is. And that device right there controls the cast vote record database and then hyperlinks the ballot images in. For that way, we can do a risk limiting audit to prove that the images. And under Ken Bennett's 5 points, the last point is we want to have a ballot library. If you as a citizen perform an audit, you will have the right to go to the library and start matching up images per ballot because it's a redundant system. We have a hybrid.
You have invented and introduced a system where all ballots are cast on paper, hand-marked paper ballots.
Yep.
Now they're messing with vote by mail, clearly because Trump doesn't want people to be able to vote without being harassed by ICE. So if you limit election by mail and mess with the Postal Service, you can kill off a few million ballots. Yep. And that's what they're about. We're going to be dealing with this more and more. You'll be back next week with Ken Bennett, and we look forward to that. Thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to go to the tragedy of CESAR CHAVEZ and Dolores Huerta, and TATANKA BRICCA, who's the chair of the KPFK station board in Los Angeles, my buddy and the co-host of California Solartopia. TATANKA, you have, and I hope we still have CHRISIAN NUNEZ on because her new group is dealing with these issues. But TATANKA BRICCA, you have been a close associate with CESAR CHAVEZ and more, of course, for the last decades with Dolores Huerta. I had an animated conversation with someone today about this. I'm not going to characterize it just yet. So what can you tell us about this situation with Dolores Huerta, who's been on these calls, by the way, and who we love dearly, and this whole hodgepodge about whatever it is? Go ahead, please, TATANKA BRICCA.
Well, thank you for having me on. I just want to say I'm here because Sonny, the one formerly known as Sluggo, invited me, and I said I would consider it because of my respect for the election protection and the Solartopia energy and everything that goes on in this show. I didn't want to, but stayed open because I don't represent Dolores here. I don't represent her foundation. I don't represent the UFW. I've had experience with all these organizations. Dolores is in some kind of hiding now. I don't know where. But my work with CESAR began in 1969 and ended in 73. With Dolores, it began personally in 1969 and never really ended. Um, though I did agree to speak today because I have heard things online, on the internet, and on the street, and from friends that convince me that largely understanding our own history of the movement is really important. It's really important to pass on what really happened and the complexity of things. Um, so I'm here, one, because the election protection and environment are two issues that Dolores championed, along with a variety of other issues. She wove together, she was a hero for the women's movement, women's rights, and speaking up. And I know that'll come up on the issues that we're going to talk about. Um, she's here for LGBTQ plus issues. She always spoke up early about that. She's a passionate environmental activist, human rights activist, rights of the planet activist, justice, democracy. Her foundation is, along with Ray McClendon's, the epitome of trusted messengers working full time and then turning out high percentage votes to protect democracy. She's a believer in distributed democracy. She's a real believer in empowering, especially young women and young girls. That's the work of her foundation for the past quarter of century. So, and I'm here to calm things down a bit because my sense is that all of us are leaders here on this call. Everyone on this call has constituencies. And I believe we're at a particular revolutionary time in history where it's important for we to be individually in our communities and families, etc., the calm and the storm that goes around us. This issue is just beginning to heat up, okay? So I want to focus on next right actions. I'm just mirroring what I do with my extremely busy life. Um, and so I'm here to talk about the process of the psychological, physical, emotional, spiritual resilience we all need now in the new future, the months and the years to come, because we are the ancestors of those to come. And also because at this particular time, not just with our democracy, but as we know with the whole world, with this administration, we're on the precipice of potential annihilating the life generating capacity of the planet, and with that, ourselves with it. So, the other thing that there's a theme that I want to bring up is violence itself. What is nonviolence? Because Dolores is a passionate advocate of nonviolence, and then we'll get into some of the contradictions that you may raise as questions on that. And she's also has a passionate commitment to empowering people, empowering others. Okay. So she has unwavering commitments that I have witnessed over, my entire adult life. Also, because going into No Kings, as Sonny talked about, I think it was close to a miracle. We never had 7 million people on that last march. Anytime when we had 7 million people on the streets in the 60s, it never was anything approaching nonviolent. It was and all Trump is looking for is violence because the people who own countries through their corporations and the people who are in power with the vast inequity of equity and money know how to deal with violence. They know that. That doesn't intimidate them at all. But we can discern actions of theirs that are predictable and then work much like Carney in Canada has done to take care of Canada and to have a strategy that the predictability of this administration with its lackeys that are so clueless of their jobs, simply there for loyalty to the white nationalist agenda, which basically read under that the people around him that he relies on mostly and listens to mostly are those allied with the Christian nationalist perspective that directly corresponds with the Netanyahu agenda. So,
Well, it's the
in
Netanyahu and Putin agenda.
and Putin and
I
Putin
think
both.
people are missing Putin's involvement, and he's, as mentioned before, he's the one who's profiting from all
Yeah.
this. Can you mention, since a lot of the people here, amazingly enough, are too young to remember COINTELPRO and the government infiltration with people who advocated violence. And Tatanka, as a seasoned, beyond seasoned activist, can you just tell us what kinds of infiltration that the Farm Workers Union faced and dealt with, and what we can expect perhaps this coming weekend?
Well, it's one of the things that stunned me because we know all of what COINTELPRO did to Martin Luther King, the Black Panthers, various peace groups. They were everywhere. And counterintelligence programs trying to disrupt the movement in the 60s and 70s. It's my belief that they also had some operation going on with the farm workers, but nothing's been written about it. And as I've been thinking about this over the last few days, I can see certain individual humans and certain things that happened that I have my suspicions about, especially from the mid 70s on. But I also see that I think they were so effective in taking tendencies that CESAR had and having people gain his trust, basically due to him what he did, grooming the young girls that he violated, that he sexually violated, and they did that to him.
This
My
is
belief is
you're
they
talking
did
about
it.
Cesar Chavez.
I'm talking about Cesar Chavez and the Synanon group that he got the attention of, and for 10 years did all kinds of things that ultimately resulted in the part of the farm worker history long after I left, where Caesar came out and accused people who had supported him from the very beginning, his most loyal people, as being communist. And this has been written about, but we need to understand our history. And I think the height of the Farm Workers Union was mid 1970 when the Great Boycott was signed. And you've got to understand that was I'm going to detail in answering your question what I characterize as an extreme revolutionary time, and a time where, well, let me take it one at a time. So at the time of the mid 70s, um, this was a time where I had a friend of mine who I sent up to La Paz, who set up the first computer system that the union had. And that computer system was firebombed up in La Paz, the farm worker, new farm worker headquarters. Caesar's two dogs, Boycott and Welga, were poisoned. Fortunately, they survived. I was coordinator of the strikes and boycotts for the Bay Area and the spokesperson for the union during the grape, lettuce, and wine boycotts. And during that time, there was someone who was paid $25,000 by Nixon's alcohol, tobacco, firearm, ATM agency to assassinate Caesar. And he had a change of heart for whatever reason, got scared, found his way to us, and we helped get him protection. So that never happened. But
So
this gives
you're
you,
saying the Nixon administration paid somebody to kill Cesar Chavez?
yes.
Oh my
So
God.
all this was happening at the time that Caesar had a bad back. He was not eating well, Diet Right Cola and all the stress of everything going on. And in that environment, um, in that environment, it only got worse in terms of the stress as things went on. I believe that I saw tendencies in Caesar that I don't have time today to go into, but I was targeted by him in a public meeting, the only time that all the farm worker organizers for the cities ever got together for the first time and the last time. And we were having an entire weekend in La Paz in the Keene, California, up in the Tehachapi Mountains, where the headquarters had moved from 40
Okay.
acres in Delano. And at the beginning, I was uh, I was told to stand up, and Caesar just laid into me, and I didn't know what came into him. He was telling lies about me, and he had farm worker groups telling lies about me. There's a whole story behind this that I still have to write up, but what happened was that ended amicably and favorably by a whole variety of circumstances. And when it was all over, in a break time, I basically took time and I just didn't know what to do. Basically, the union organizers, because I was coordinating the National Safeway boycott at the time, because the Safeway headquarters
Okay.
were in Richmond, California,
Okay.
and all the organizers from around the country in Chicago and New York and everything saw Caesar going crazy, and they said, "We're prepared to boycott the boycott. Caesar's gone crazy. He only understands power, and give us the okay." And I said, "We added
Well,
break there."
so far we haven't had that kind of a rebellion against the rebellion internally that I've seen, possibly because we're in a different, so much more decentralized world. I mean, Cesar Chavez was incredibly important to the farm working organizations back then. I don't know if we can name a single individual that would have that vulnerability that would have a big impact. Tatanka. I mean, it's kind of a different world now.
Well, let me come back to that. I just
Well,
want to
can
finish
we?
this
I've
part
got
of
a
the
couple
story.
hands. Do you want to take a couple hands, or do you want to keep talking? It's up to you.
Let me just complete this part of the story.
Please. Okay, and
So
then we'll
I
go to.
I didn't on the break. I knew I wasn't going to back down, but I also knew I wasn't going to go along. That was not a solution. That would just played into the growers' hands. But I didn't know where to go. And as I came back, I went into the room and told one of Caesar's aides. It just came out of my mouth. I said, "Please tell Cesar for whatever I might have done to contribute to this. Tell him I'm truly sorry." Um, a minute later, he came back. He said, "All is forgiven." Now, I
Oh,
couldn't think of a thing I'd done wrong, but it was a weird thing. We went through the whole weekend. It was a fantastic weekend. When it was over, he encouraged everybody to leave, get their planes, but he asked me and the San Francisco group to stay after for a whole day. And in that day, we talked about so many things, and he ended up basically apologizing to me. And from that moment on, I was included in negotiations, just me and Caesar and Jerry Cohen, the attorney, and the
okay.
Uline Corporation. And what I learned from that is that Dolores told me later that she and Caesar would fight. Now, I knew about Caesar and his dalliances, and I knew about he and Dolores um, having children, but nobody knew
Wow.
about the rape. Nobody knew about that. And Dolores told me at that time that he saw you fighting him, never backing down, but not abandoning him, going to the other side, and then basically said, "I only know two people in my lifetime that he's ever apologized to, and one is me and one is you." And then he explained that Caesar is basically Apache, and he does not trust white people. And what happened when you fought, did not back down, uh, and somehow found another way, was a level of respect and welcome to the family, and that's why you ended up in negotiations.
Well, I think you opened a door to a way of being that is now dominating the kinds of organizing we're seeing. Because if we had the kinds of marches that are being organized for this coming weekend, if we'd have tried to do this in the 60s and 70s, the total media would be dominated by who's at who else's throat. And you were able to work through that in a way we don't have a Cesar Chavez right
Well,
now. And thank
I'm
goodness.
gonna I'm gonna mention a couple things, and I want to
Well,
take Lynn and questions. We
yes.
need to understand at that
But
time.
what you did back then, and people are now asking, why is this coming out from Dolores now? But the kinds of conflict resolution that you were able to do that back then had not been possible at the height of the anti-war movement, where people just tore each other to pieces.
Well,
We don't
I
see that.
think
We
I
don't
think
see that
Dolores
happening.
saw when you see she was confronted, as was the Union, with the New York Times story, okay, ahead of time.
Right. Okay.
And then when she heard that the two girls at the ages they were both raped by Caesar and groomed to be raped, that they were her heroes. So when the issue of covering up, erasing Caesar's memory comes up, she says, yes, that's what we must go through. But, and then she said, well, it's, any mention of being replaced by me, no, it should go to the true heroes. And there's a variety of them. Okay.
Right.
One is the young girls that were violated, that instantly had her tell her own story that she'd been sitting on. And she can't discern. She said, maybe it really would have helped the movement. But at that time, I was cornered. I was alone. He was my boss, blah, 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 blah. I knew what would happen to me. But the main thing, it wasn't that. The main thing is, would the movement have survived? That's how she was thinking. And I know she was, because in negotiations, she spoke so passionately about bathrooms for women, and the growers were just bathrooms for women. And she said that contratista, the labor contractor, who would be, Latino like them, but is employed by the growers. One, they had a hiring hall, not a contratista system. And two, they needed the bathrooms because he would follow the women and watch them pee and then know the conditions under which they could be violated. And everybody woke up and they went, oh my God. And I saw how passionately, I never dreamed that she had ever been raped, right? And she had sublimated it because I know she wanted the movement to survive, and she wanted no woman to go through what she went through, but she didn't think it was possible. And when she's confronted, I want everybody to watch the first interview by Maria Hinojosa. It was Amy Goodman interviews. It's from just Friday, 3 days ago. Watch that 20-minute interview and watch it over and over again. And then watch one more interview I'll tell you about later, because we need to learn from our own history that one at the time that we were organizing, everybody knew that after 3 years of going up and down the valley between 62 and 65, Cesar, Dolores, and Helen, Caesar's wife, asking questions, finding out what would it take, how much money would it take, and under what conditions, and what would you want a contract to look like. And they hadn't even come to the resolution of that. They had come to the resolution that simply 15 cents an hour would make so much a difference. And the thing they were most afraid of and they wanted was a death benefit. They wanted to make sure that their children who were dying due to all the conditions out there in the fields could be buried with dignity. That was the first death benefit. And Caesar's brother, Manuel, made sure he could make the coffins even before they got that benefit. But everybody knew it was the Filipinos that went on strike and invited the farm workers, the Mexicans, to join them. And they met with their teams and they found out nobody wanted to join them. We don't even know their language. In that time, all the the farm workers were segregated by ethnicity, by language. They kept them, the divide and conquer thing. And Caesar said, they're farm workers like us. And at the end of it, he had a standoff. He said, if I have to start this all over again, I will. If I'm the only one, I will join the Filipinos. And then they all followed him. Okay.
Right. So,
Anyway, that history nobody knows. It's sort of written out of the history. So heroes include Larry Itliong, who was on the board of the farm workers, and Pete Velasco. They include all
okay.
the leadership. They include all the organizers. They include everybody that didn't eat lettuce. They include so many people, but basically they do include the women and the children. So naming things after justice and after the movement, you know, the farm worker movement, the labor movement, the movement for rights of children and re-education of children and girls especially, to never have this happen. To get Christian Nunez, so good to hear you again, and I want to get in touch with your program. So go ahead.
Hey.
Let's get
Well,
questions.
also, I hope that this renaming of the Cesar Chavez stuff will contribute to renaming anything that's named after Donald Trump. I mean, you know, if you're going to make an issue of Cesar Chavez, and then we don't need Donald Trump's
Well,
name all over the
this is
place
just
either.
beginning. I don't know if the New York Times has more. This was a year and a half study. And so quite often they do, all right? But this is just beginning. And if we don't understand our history, there's going to be all kinds of people with all kinds of vengeance, not just against Caesar, but against Dolores. Simply,
Right.
you
Well,
know, and
Dolores has
we've already seen some of that. So
Dolores has done an astonishing thing here. And let's go now. Dave Saltman, you're with us. We're going to postpone a bit, but we are going to get to dealing with what's happening to the media. Tatanka, this is an incredibly important presentation, and we are really grateful for you to taking time out and putting yourself on the line. We really, really appreciate it, and it's all I'd hoped it would be. And we still have 77 people with us, for God's sakes. So, and a much larger audience beyond that. Lynn Feinerman and then MYLA RESON, please.
Yes, two things. First of all, I believe that there is no random timing. And I think that this, shall we say, doo-doo, hit the fanny because of Epstein and because of Donald Trump's involvement in the trafficking of girls and because of their being cornered and having nothing else to do. I feel the timing is very interesting, to say the least. And I think it's meant to manipulate us into thinking, oh, well, nobody's any good.
Yes.
So why
Yeah.
should we keep on pursuing this moral question of what is being done to girls and women? And it all gets obscured. All
Yes.
of the pain and sorrow and torment that girls and women go through over sexuality in all spheres is just,
Yes.
it's unspeakable.
You're
That's
right.
number one. Number two, Women Rising Radio has placed on our Facebook page, which no one ever looks at, that we are in total solidarity with Dolores Huerta and with all survivors. That means that we want to place the spotlight back where it belongs, on the people who have had to suffer from the unbridled and untaught and unrefined sexuality and domination that pervades most cultures on this planet. That's all I have to say.
And
Thank you very much.
so
That
much.
was
And whether this was engineered, I mean, I don't even know whether this is going to lead to Epstein files, okay? But whether it's engineered or it just so happened to happen at this time, yes, there will be, and there is a movement to try to say, oh, this is the new normal, you know? He did it, so, Trump's no different.
right. But
That's
if you're
one of the
gonna
things. So
if you're gonna take
but pardon me, so
go
Sunday,
ahead, go
but the
go.
way we handle it if we speak truth to power, don't shy away from this. Yes, I was out at 10 o'clock on Wednesday night with a friend at Barrios Unidos putting black paint over the beautiful 8 by 10-foot mural, okay? And young people would come by and say, well, that's good. What are you going to do with that? And he said, we are erasing the image of Cesar Chavez. It's going to be black. And immediately, as I was participating in that, I had the thought, black contains all colors of the rainbow. Then my friend said, and he was there with his grandson doing this, and we had the lights on, you know, on Soquel Avenue. And he said, what I want to see is I want to see a living plant with a flower. I want a butterfly and a bird, and then an uplifting quote. And he said, maybe it's too soon for a quote from Dolores. And I said, yeah, let's, you know. So that is happening all throughout the country. My heart goes out to people in Cesar Chavez elementary schools, the teachers, the parents with the children, what they need to go through. But it's quickening this. And if we all stay on message on how the renaming goes, learn from each other, support the victims, never again, etc., and get to the cause of it, that will be the integrity that speaks to hold Donald Trump accountable sooner.
Absolutely.
If we are broken up in our movement, that's not good for us.
Absolutely right. Beautifully spoken, Tatanka. Very important stuff. MYLA RESON, and we still have more than 70 people with us.
So I was one of the scores of college students who went to Delano early on in the grape strike, and I was there from the fall of 1965 through the spring of 1966. And while I was there, and let me just say, we rotated those students who were volunteering. We rotated different jobs that we would take on. And one day, they took us out to the fields in buses because there had been a group of Arabic-speaking laborers who had been brought to the fields to scab during the strike, and we were taught a few phrases in Arabic to tell the workers that there was a strike going on. So it was another ethnic group that was brought in to scab against the Latino farm workers and the Filipino farm workers.
Yes.
I've got a few different anecdotes, but one of my jobs was working in the office, helping to translate the movement newspaper that was called El Malcriado, which is the naysayer, right? Yeah. And we had different steps. So my Spanish wasn't great, but so somebody would do a rough translation of Spanish to English, and then I would kind of clean up the English translation so that it could be a bilingual operation. So those were a couple of many things that I was doing. But when I was translating on Malcriado one day, somebody shot at CESAR. And he was wounded, and he survived. And I think that was before you got there, Tatanka, but that was another thing that happened. Just a couple more points that I'd like to make. And I certainly wasn't elevated at all. I was just one of the many, as I said, one of the many college students who went to Delano to volunteer during the beginning of the strike. In my opinion, and one of the victims, the child victims of CESAR, said that she thought instead of replacing CESAR for some other hero, that it's the movement that should be celebrated. And I agree with that from my humble perspective. I think that it would be great to just instead of putting another individual or another couple of individuals on a
Can I
pedestal.
respond, Myla, in the interest of
Well,
time?
sure. Let me just finish up, please, Tatanka.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so at any rate, I kind of lost my train there.
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say that it would be great to put the whole movement on a pedestal, and I kind of lost my train, and I apologize. So that's pretty much what I
Well,
have to say.
thank you. A couple things really important. That's the first thing Dolores said. Go with the movimiento. The movement is where it should go. The reportage the first 2 days was amazing, largely because in California and Arizona, the large number of Latino and Latina reporters, it was so balanced. They didn't get off into anything. It was really reported well. And I think most of the stories I saw, people were having the same thing. We don't, one of the lessons is don't ever put a leader on a pedestal. And the other thing is that we want to see the movement survive. The other thing is everybody knew at the time that, as I mentioned, it was the Filipinos that struck. What people don't realize, and I think is very symbolic, is the Union always honored the martyrs, okay, the ones that sacrificed and then died. And I found out, I mean, I just was common knowledge at the time, but I guess it never got very far. The first two martyrs of the largely Latino, Filipino, black, white, Arab, everything, but the first two martyrs were Nan Freeman, an 18-year-old girl in Florida on the sun-kissed strike against oranges, who was killed. A young Jewish girl was killed. And the second was Nage Daifala, who was an Arab, a Yemeni farm worker in the Central Valley, killed in Lamont, California, struck by a deputy outside an eating establishment. Everybody else fled, and he stayed there. And then as he ran, he was cracked over the head by the cop's flashlight, and he died. And they just dragged his body and took him out. That precipitated less than 3 days later, 2 days later, I think, a march of 10,000 people in Lamont. And I was there. I was the go-between between CESAR and Dolores. So Dolores had come down for the funeral and for the memorial for Nan Freeman. Then she came down for the Arab farm workers. So get that. This movement, the first two martyrs were Jewish and Arab. And I believe he was Muslim. Okay. Now, the symbology of that in this war right now just is inescapable, that when you have a movement that really honors basic justice for all humans and is nonviolent and is assiduously, and we need to erase the image of Caesar for now, and probably his legacy as someone who was a strategic farm worker or organizer, which that interview will show, I think will be solid. But he should not, if he's erased out because of what he did, so be it. It's the movement that needs to survive. And I think the story maybe didn't come out about COINTELPRO, because I assume they were involved, was that they were so effective in compromising him that the height of the farm worker movement that summer, we had farm workers from every continent. We had from Latin America, we had from the Mideast, we had from the Far East. Those and domestics, the two groups omitted from the National Labor Relations Act in the United States in the 30s that allowed organizing, labor organizing. Those groups wanted to learn how we did it. And we thought we were going to have a national farm workers union, and this would be a model for the world. That turned out to be the high point. So by the time COINTELPRO and the moneyed interest diminished the effectiveness of the union, they didn't even need to do it. Their job was done.
Can I say, in terms of COINTELPRO, of course, COINTELPRO is shorthand for counterintelligence
Counterintelligence.
program.
That's right.
And it's my belief that there may have been one specific counterintelligence program that was simply replaced by another, and the practice of disrupting groups that are doing important work has never gone away. Even
No.
the name changed. And let me just say, Sonny, that for those of us who work in the Pacifica universe, and prior to that, I was a community organizer fighting a dump for plutonium-contaminated nuclear weapons waste in New Mexico. And I certainly saw a lot of practices of disrupting the organization. You know, it has many forms, but as far as I'm concerned, we see it regularly. It has never gone away, and it probably existed long before. It's people who have power and money and influence find ways to disrupt organizations that are doing, may I say, God's work, but important work.
Dog's work. It's dog's work.
At any rate, I just wanted
Well, let
to
me
put that out there. Go ahead.
let me just tell my favorite COINTELPRO story. You know, my favorite, and Dave Saltman is going to talk to us about another disruption that we're facing now, which is the major media and the attack on CBS. And so we're going to get to Dave in a minute. But I do want, my favorite law in history as a historian is the law of unintended consequences. And I have been involved in a number of organizations that were infiltrated, but the number one was Liberation News Service. And we were a radical news service in the late 60s. And we were infiltrated. We're 100% certain, we've seen the documents, that FBI agents came into the news service with the express purpose of breaking it up. And they succeeded, except they didn't count on Marshall Bloom. And they broke up our news service, but Marshall Bloom, it's a long, wonderful story. There is a movie about it called Far Out, of course. And we wound up taking the news service, or part of it, and starting a farm in Western Massachusetts. It's just a phenomenal story, totally caused by FBI and COINTELPRO. And the bottom line is, because of COINTELPRO, there was a news service that survived in New York, and our group started a farm in Western Massachusetts. The news service died off up there. It persisted in New York. There's a film about this. Email me at Solartopia, and I'll tell you about that film. And our farm wound up being the focal point for the renewable of the organic food movement among the baby boom generation and the beginning of the no nukes movement. So I always love to say that J. Edgar Hoover was the godfather of the no nukes movement.
There you go.
Now,
Sonny,
what good may have come out of the infiltration of the farm workers, I don't know. Maybe you can tell us, Tatanka.
on my pivot, I want to mention two things, two phrases that Dolores talked about for us to contemplate. Before that, just to say that on this very show, we saw the reincarnation of a different tactic and strategy in the election protection movement back in Minnesota, right? Where now they're going in, instead of doing what they were doing before, they're infiltrating groups and pretending to be nice and getting information to use against us. So yes, it's a common thing. So one thing Dolores was fond of saying, there are times in history, and we experienced two of them together, okay, where we actually saw this to be true. Just at the time you think all is lost, you've really lost, there is no hope, you have actually already won and don't know it yet. And it's the only way I can explain this seemingly hopeless situation in our nation and in the world. But inside, there's something inside me, the law of unintended consequences and factors kind of coming together in No Kings, young people that won't have anything to do with either party for good reason. That we heard going on, in Texas and in New York. You can't even get the Democrats right. So at the top level, the corporatocracy of both parties, the young people coming together, the fact that Dolores Huerta is the one that introduced me to the Working Families Party and Indivisible are the nonviolent organizers behind No Kings. They don't preach it, but they practice it. They put it in place. And she has been a fan of the Working Families Party for a long, long time. So she really, I want us to contemplate the fact, it sort of explains to me why I feel it's not just because I'm a glass half full guy, which I am, but I feel some kind of overwhelming positivism. I also work, you know, with a movement that people don't know a lot about, we'll talk about sometime, but this whole UFO ET movement, the only thing that people in Congress have been able to agree on in the last 4 years, and Danny Sheehan is at the heart of it and understands why this is the top secret above all top secrets, because it is more important as the glue holding together the whole psyops operation on our whole nation, all of us, that takes place to allow the extractive industries and what we've seen, you know, with Diablo Canyon here, the interaction of the oil companies, the coal, you know, the King Kong that you talk about, together with nuclear, together with fracking, and and it is what holds all that together is that movement of the reverse engineering of the technology. We've had, I mean, to contemplate, how do you contemplate we've never needed the oil wars? We've had free
Well,
energy.
we've got the renewables.
Unbelievable.
This has really been fascinating. Let's talk about another COINTELPRO operation, the Ellison Trump operation, which is with Dave Saltman here, who's our major media veteran and grand old man who's been on all the major media networks. You know, now we have Barry Weiss. And CBS and Tatanka and MYLA, we're both involved in Pacifica. CBS, Columbia Broadcasting System, has been the bulwark of the American news media for what, 50, 60 years now, even more, dating all the way back to McCarthy in the 1950s. That's 70 years. Edward R. Murrow at CBS brought down Joe McCarthy in the 1950s. And now finally, after all these years, they've found the way apparently to kill CBS, which is Barry Weiss and Ellison and all his billions. And Dave Saltman, and I hope this is okay with MYLA and you and Tatanka, if we can segue from the farm
Yeah.
workers.
And I will have one question for him as well, for Dave.
To CBS here,
Yeah.
and we
Yep.
as we are all not surprisingly involved in Pacifica and trying to get a decent time for our show, California Solartopia. But Dave Saltman, what is the answer to what Barry Weiss is doing to CBS? Is CBS about to become another Fox?
I would regard that question as rather insulting to Fox. First of all, let me just correct your perspective slightly. CBS Radio, which was just taken off the air, has been around for about 100 years. Radio first began in this country in the 1920s, and William S. Paley, who was the heir to his father was in the cigar business, and he heard about these things called radio stations that were up for sale in the mid 20s, and he thought it might be a good place to advertise cigars, and he bought them dirt cheap. Nobody wanted them or even knew what to do with them. He bought a few stations and started the CBS radio network, and it's way beyond Edward R. Murrow.
Well, you say CBS, David. Did he call it the cigar broadcasting system?
Actually, CBS, the Columbia was not the first name for it. There was a different name. I can't remember what the original name was. But you're right. It wasn't Cigar, but it was something not the Columbia Broadcasting System, which is where it ended up. That's what CBS stands for. But what's interesting, and a lot of people don't realize this, William S. Paley, who ran the company, I worked for CBS for about almost 15 years in the 80s and 90s. And Paley was still running the company then. He had his own elevator, and he was a very friendly, personable guy. I actually had a rather unique relationship with him because he asked me to make a film for him about one of his other business interests, which was the newspaper called the International Herald Tribune. The paper
Yeah, that was in a movie, and I got
was the
it
producer
there.
of that movie. And
So
Mr.
is Barry Weiss doing to CBS what COINTELPRO did or tried to do to the farm workers and to Liberation News Service?
She hasn't got a clue in that direction. No, I don't think so. She's running loose. She's got to be stopped. If COINTELPRO would probably keep the thing more together just to be able to gather some information, but she's destroying the whole thing. You got to understand that Paley not only found Edward R. Murrow, he discovered Frank Sinatra. He discovered Jack Benny. He discovered American comedy. He almost single-handedly, he discovered John Hammond, who ran CBS Records for more than 50 years, who discovered Count Basie, who discovered Billie Holiday, and who discovered Bob Dylan. That's all from this one guy. I mean, he was a giant. He was the quintessential person behind American culture. Him and Harold Ross at the New Yorker and the Algonquin Roundtable, that accounts for pretty much 100% of American culture in the 20th and 21st century until today. So that these guys were giants. And when you and another person to look at in that same through that same lens is Ted Turner, who started from nothing. He was his father. I think his father had some kind of what do they call it? It was some kind of a cable TV, UHF TV station in.
Of course, Ted Turner discovered Jane Fonda, or was it the other way around? We don't know.
Well, this is what I think. This is a key thing. Now, Jane Fonda, who's still around, and Ted is still around too. He's not in good health, but he's still around. They could be vitally important in terms of Pacifica or of any kind of movement. Ted Turner, remember, he's the one that told all the billionaires to give away their fortunes. He started that. These guys,
but they haven't done it yet. I mean,
some of them have. No, that's not true. Warren Buffett has given all of his away, and a lot of them have done it. And these are the guys who are waiting to be asked to finance, you tell me what, Pacifica or something else. I don't know.
Well, that's the question now. With the demise of any usefulness of Fox and CBS and soon CNN in the ocean of the internet, after the No King's Day and all these other grassroots, basically no visible leadership movements.
Right.
I mean, we're seeing a transition from the farm workers, which were run in a lot of ways with an iron hand, at least for a while, by CESAR and other movement organizations. We're now having what we talked about, which is a completely diverse or diffuse leadership. Yeah. Now, with Barry Weiss, as you say, making a total mess of CBS and nobody wanting anything to do with Fox, and then the real focus of the media being a bunch of comedians, Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel, Jon Stewart, Desi Lydak. I mean, that's where the center of gravity is. What is the transition, Dave Saltman, after your stellar career in the major media, from major corporate-owned media to diverse, diffuse, internet-based media, podcasts, all that other, or things like this.
It's
What,
all,
what do we know?
podcasts are certainly happening, while I mean, there are, I don't know how many there are, but I think that I heard that Joe Rogan has over 1 million viewers. And I think I haven't verified this, but that he makes millions of dollars in personal, salary from the thing. So it's certainly could be a going concern. Like I say, the CBS radio network started out as a bunch of a bunch of stations that nobody listened to, that was all about cigar advertising. So
Well,
yeah,
now it's all about pot advertising, but still, it's the same
but I
deal.
think that I think that Barry Weiss is, maybe she's doing us a favor by destroying the network. I don't know. I personally don't agree, because I have a lot of heart and soul. I mean, I knew all those guys. The film that I made with Mr. Paley, Walter Cronkite was the narrator. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
uh,
I had the rare honor of getting into a real shouting match with Walter
yes,
Cronkite
he
in the
hates your
middle of a
guts.
living room. But
I
there you
think
go.
he hates
I've
your guts.
actually had the honor of getting in major public fights with both Walter Cronkite and Oliver Stone. But there you go. I didn't look for either one, but I'm just
This
an
is
idiot.
why we need you to stay around.
Yeah, all right. Steve Caruso, and we can keep going at least till 4 o'clock. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, you look at Clear Channel and how they brought everything up,
Yeah,
and all of a sudden the weather system got, pushed forward as the people's answer to solving our emergencies, because the local channels got all sold down the river and they had no local news anymore. So
yeah.
now when you turn on the weather station to listen to you just want to listen to the weather. It doesn't have to be storming. You just want to see what's happening. All hazards radio. Thank you. This is constantly being beaten into your head, this trauma of being, yeah, subdued by this. Obey in advance, all hazards radio. Just pay attention to this and forget about your clear channel station.
That is a really interesting point. Let me tell you one of the great secrets of 60 Minutes and Sunday Morning, the two flagship broadcasts of CBS News, because it's all about local news. The secret, Charles Curalt used to say, if we're ever at a story where there's another reporter there from some other outlet, we're at the wrong place. We shouldn't be there. And the way that they used to get their reporters to the right story at the right time was exactly what you're describing. When you walk into the CBS building on 57th Street every day, the first thing you'd see was an enormous stack of local newspapers: the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, the Denver Post, the Louisville Courier Journal. They were there every day, and the producers and executive producers of these shows religiously read these papers cover to cover every single day and picked out the bubbling up local stories.
Yeah.
And it's
Well, here you go.
exactly the
Now,
same idea.
they grab these stories from local news and then they republish them and say, oh, you can't read our stuff because you haven't paid a subscription for our service. And this is what goes on. Look at Mitt Romney, where he got his money from, supposedly. And I've read articles about it saying that he got his money from the conflict in Central America way back when. Now, can we tie that to what happened here in Columbus with Southern Air Transport and Wexner and his mob buddies floating arms in and out of the country and drugs for the CIA, which was all proven? And Harvey, you know that, tie Mitt Romney. I mean, the whole cabal, the truth is coming out every second of the day, every millisecond, and it's starting to snowball.
Well, let's go. We're going to go to 4:20. We got 20 more minutes.
Thanks.
Steve, if you'll stay with us. This is fascinating. It's great to have Dave Saltman with us. Tatanka Bricca, do you want to, as chair of the KPFK board in Pacifica, do you want to add to that?
Well, I'm really glad to hear that story, Dave, about the local news when people came in, because in a time of distributed energy and at a time where we need local resilience, I mean, local communities that know how to get clean water and grow our own food and have our own networks of support for people going through all kinds of trauma, okay? economic and otherwise. I think this model really, really fits. Now, in weather, for instance, that's the first thing that came up. During times of climate change, the way you see the weather is, they take an area, like the area I live in, and it's like a couple counties. And when you see the predicted weather, what it's going to look like, it's a certain percentage of anything in that area getting that temperature or that wind or that rain. We were fire evacuees from Ben Lomond, California, and there was an incident after that some of you may remember in a place just north of Santa Cruz, called Scotts Valley, where there was a tornado in Scotts Valley, right? There are tornadoes popping up all kinds of places now. But in the storm, it was only a local person in a university who mapped out the local bioregions and figured out that there was going to be 120-mile-an-hour wind in Felton, California, within a half an hour. And that person warned everybody in time. And in fact, 120-mile-an-hour sideways tornado came through there, and the creek rose up and everything flooded, and nobody died because of that. Okay. The need for microclimate reporting, which is like you saying, we wanted the local story, will be a future for the Weather Service because people need it. They really need it. Otherwise you have no predictive value to protect yourself. So the model in all kinds of ways of looking to local government, looking to, local things to see the bubbling up solutions that people have that then spill over into county and state and national politically, also on the weather, also on healthcare, also on housing, all these solutions that people have the ingenuity, creativity, and the local community face to face to be able to solve these things could be a really important way of organizing a new national media. I have one more question for you. I'm outdated on this, but I do know for a fact that, and this is dating me. Remember when they had the thing on the grass that Colbert and Jon Stewart did in D.C. For sanity back 15, 20 years ago, right? In the Bush administration.
Right.
I do know that Stephen Colbert had 24-hour Navy SEAL protection. I do know, and because he did reveal it, that Michael Moore, after Bowling for Columbine, had 24-hour Navy SEAL protection. And I do know for a period toward the end of Steve Jobs' life, he also had that. It makes me wonder. I haven't kept up with this, but to all these comedians, is the only reason they're surviving is that they have 24-hour protection?
Well, it depends on how funny they are. Sorry about that.
I don't think so. Not that I know of. I used to hang a lot with comedians back in the Gilded Saturday Night Live.
Gilda Radner days.
And they never had, if anybody needed protection, it was protection from the comedians.
Well, and I figured out, Dave, that CBS in 100 years has gone from the cigar broadcasting system to the cannabis broadcasting system. That's been the basic cultural change.
Tatanka, just following on what you were just saying, the one really successful news organization, there's only a couple that I can think of, but the one that has really flourished in this environment, and basically by focusing on local phenomena, is Bloomberg. Bloomberg is all over the world. Now, just to give you a sense of this, when I was at CBS News at the height of its glory, I think that there were 24 foreign bureaus. We had something like 24 foreign correspondents. And they closed, as soon as I remember that they were closing the Manila bureau, and the Manila bureau chief was a good friend of mine, Larry Doyle. And he called the foreign desk and he said, you're closing this bureau. And he said, I'm here to tell you that tomorrow there's going to be a revolution in this country. And they're like, what the, and they didn't close it. And sure enough, that bureau managed to stay open for a while. But
well, obviously he provoked the revolution to keep his job.
Knowing him, it was entirely within the possibilities. You're right. But what I wanted to say was, just to give you a sense of the scale, Bloomberg has over 800 bureaus worldwide. They've got a correspondent in every little village in Brazil. I mean, it's just really phenomenal.
And I go to them a lot now because of the contradictions going on with Trump to find out how close we are to a rebellion within the GOP because of the stock market. They nail it.
They're not strictly doing business coverage by any means.
No.
They cover everything.
Well, here's the question. You talk about 800 correspondents. With the internet, there are 8,000 or 80,000. How do we make a coherent force out of all the people that are podcasting and doing blogs and stuff?
I have to tell a union guy like you that the answer is organize.
Organize. That's right. Right. Can't just talk about it, got to do it. And I know Steve has a question.
Steve, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah,
Brian Foster, you wanted to say something. Go ahead, Steve.
Right. Oh, so yeah, why did CBS Radio close? Lack of advertising? Is that the reason?
Too much democracy.
Yeah.
Not
a billionaire.
Oh, well, right.
Look, Salty and I just watched. There's a 4-part documentary on Netflix about Murdoch and who founded Fox. And push came to shove. He had 4 children and then 2 more and 4 wives. And that part's interesting. But the bottom line is, at the end of the day, Rupert Murdoch chose his personal fascist ideology over his family. He could have had a family solution, keep the family together, and run Fox in a congenial family way. And instead, he chose his older son, Laughlin, who's a fascist, because he wanted to keep Fox News as a fascist operation. That's basically it. And Ellison looks like he's going to do the same thing. And what's more important to Elon Musk than being able to give a Sieg Heil from a podium and swear allegiance to Hitler? I got to say, there's an excellent movie on Netflix called Nuremberg. It's not quite a good title. It's basically about Rami Malek plays what, in fact, the Allies assigned a psychiatrist to Goering at Nuremberg. And it's a pretty interesting story. And at the very end, what really got Goering convicted was that he could not renounce Hitler. They said if Hitler came back, and this is because the psychiatrist sussed him out, they asked him, if Hitler came back, would you follow him again? And knowing that this was going to guarantee his death sentence, Goering said, yes, Heil Hitler. So these guys, for all their money and their sophistication and whatever, have ingrained in them a pretty serious fascist belief. And that's what you get from Murdoch. He could have kept the family together. He chose fascism over family.
Well,
so there you go, Brian. Wait, Brian Foster to talk. I gotta get Brian Foster in, and then you. Okay, please go ahead, Brian, real quick.
Can you hear me now?
Go for it. Yes, now.
Can you see me?
No, but just go ahead.
Okay, so it's been 3 weeks since overnight, within hours, Trump declared a war after it was.
You gotta be quick, Brian. We're almost out of time. Go for it.
After the fact he raped Katie Johnson in 1993 came out, discussed on The View on national television.
Right.
And there's, a lot of people. In fact, it's a major division, it turns out, between, small town people whether this is to save America from Iran's nuclear bomb or diversion, right? But basically, the reason there's so much so much Epstein files is that Katie Johnson made charges against him when she saw him put in the White House in 2016, and the FBI didn't like Trump. You know, Trump and Bannon are trying to tear the civilization down, right? So they collected all these files and they found that Epstein's plea bargain was invalid. They arrested him, and then he's murdered to protect Trump, essentially. But all of that accusation that she made and was the basis of the case against Epstein and then against Trump at the first time around. And she created she gave a video, affidavits. Originally it was about 30 minutes.
Yeah, I watched it. It was the most sickening thing I've ever seen.
It is absolutely true.
Horrifying.
It is absolutely true.
Yes.
But after Epstein's murder, Trump's in the White House, they got her to disappear. They got her to back down. And her initial accusation was a Jane Doe as well. So we didn't know what her name is, right? Well, now he's back. Well, now he's back, and the files themselves are coming out, not individual cases and accusations against him, right? So what happens is on the 24th of February, NPR did a report that some 30 pages are redacted about that accusation, specifically her, Katie Johnson, against him, and asked, why, right? If he's innocent, why is that redacted? Then it was discussed on national television on the show The View on the 27th, and within hours, he ordered an attack.
Right.
An attack that he promised he would never do. There'll be no more war. I have a board of peace.
Right.
It is obvious he has no plan for this. He can't explain exactly why he did it. So, but the thing is, this is the only logical way to get rid of him. You want to impeach him. You want people to understand what really happened. It isn't just a distraction. It's the Katie Johnson war.
Yes, Katie Johnson. That video is just astounding, and you're 100% right, Brian. And there's one other piece of the puzzle which is not being discussed, which really angers me, which is that this war came about exactly as Russia was being clobbered by the Ukrainians. And what's saving Putin, and one of the major impacts of this war is that billions of dollars are now pouring into Putin and Russia to prolong the war against Ukraine.
It's not just billions of dollars. The Ukrainians cut off Hungary's oil supply that was coming through a pipeline across Ukraine. The Hungarians are blocking the continuation of the war. They're blocking any more money for the Ukrainians because of the Ukrainians' action, right? Now, all of a sudden, there is no oil. It isn't a question of price specifically. There's no oil. Where there's an oil shortage, right? So Hungary, Orban, is going to be even more entrenched and stop that money from going to the Ukraine. It's going to end that war. Ukrainians cannot fight without any money.
Right. Yeah. That's a bit, and nobody, everybody's talking about Israel, and that's fine, but nobody's talking about Putin. He is the big winner in the Iran war to the extent he's helping the Iranians, for God's sakes.
But we don't know exactly what's going on there, but you should.
Oh, we do. We do.
Yeah,
There's people on the ground. If you go to YouTube, you can see exactly what's going on. Ukraine is kicking their butts.
And this is the one thing now, the Iran war is the best thing that's happened to Putin in years. And, the Americans went in to Iran without a plan. The plan is Putin's plan. Nobody benefits greater from this closing of the Straits of Hormuz than Putin.
That may not be exactly it. It's an unintended consequence, as you were saying. Your favorite historical.
Well, somebody intended it.
Israel shot Charlie Kirk in order to end.
Oh, come on. Okay.
They could
Brian,
have.
That's it.
They could very well have. Tatanka, you want to take it?
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Two things. Two things. Just the connection, and then I want to talk about independent research.
Okay, we're down to 6 minutes. So
I know.
just a couple minutes.
Very quickly.
Go ahead.
What Danny Sheehan is doing on unintended consequences, in order to get what is needed for the Epstein files, one of the consequences of this will be the group that has been pulled together, and they asked Danny to write this bill to basically protect posse comitatus and make sure that we don't have permanent, and we already do, with ICE and with democratic cities, but it doesn't get any worse, that we don't have our policing, we don't have our military policing American cities. This involves MAGA people that are to the right of the ones that have already resisted. And this could result in getting the things that were taken out of the law that was a Biden executive order that Danny Sheehan wrote. It is the law that all branches of the military must report everything they know about UFOs, ETs, and private contractors and everything since January 1st of 1945. But Trump sabotaged the effectiveness by the Civilian Review Board to vet the material, and then by the subpoena power that Congress would have to get out of the military what they don't want to give. We're very close to getting that subpoena power, with which Danny wants to follow the paper trail of Trump with Epstein money, the trillions that went there, that explain Putin, explain Netanyahu, that explain the whole thing. Now, the other thing I want to say is for people that are research and talk about local stuff, I didn't know this, but about 4 or 5 weeks ago, I got invited down, and Dolores had come down from the University of Santa Cruz. They decided to have their record. What do you call it when your records? I'm coming out of my file. Any organization or any individual, your file, your personal stuff. What's it called?
I don't know, but we're gonna end up.
Anyway, they're going to give all the information instead of Wayne State back in Michigan that nobody could relate to in California. It's going to go to the University of Santa Cruz where, the Grateful Dead, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
And so many people, all like David Harris had a biography that Bill Paley allowed him to review him for over 2 years. And at the last minute, Paley said, I can't do it. I don't want to do it. You're off. And instead of writing a tell-all book, David honored that, didn't write it, but has a lot of stuff that Salty's talking about. And more than half of archives, that's the word, more than half of what David Harris wrote is not in the 10 books that he's written. They're in the archives at Stanford. And
Okay.
he made the condition of Stanford, as did Bob Fitch, who has the images of MLK and all the activism of the movement. He made it conditional. I didn't know that it's a money-making operation for universities.
Okay.
That nobody can make money off the images, that any individual or nonprofit organization can get these images and get anything from Stanford for free. And so David Harris as well has that, and they're setting that sort of thing up
We'll put the
in Santa Cruz. So there's a lot of young people and a lot of older people that want to research famous people or famous organizations. It's more and more at your local university with conditions that allow access. So it's
great to
a
hear that.
fantastic way to write a book, the
Thank you,
stuff that they weren't
Tatanka.
able
Thank
to
you for that.
complete in their lifetimes.
Thank you for that, Tatanka. Steve will get you a minute. We're down to the last minute. Want to remind everybody on the coming weekend, no kings, no nukes, no war. There are, there are demonstrations in your neighborhood everywhere. And next week, we had 50 people with us. Still, fantastic group. What a 2 hours and 20 minutes. Thank you, Steve Caruso, for engineering. Again, no kings, no nukes, no war. This coming Saturday, go in your neighborhood. We will discuss it all next week. We'll have you back to talk about Salty and God, what a time. Steve Caruso, do you want the last word here?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, the old radio stations, I mean, that was the center of the household. If something was going on, you'd flip it on, you'd hear from a neighbor or rumor, whatever. But the thing in Ukraine and Russia, if you watch Jay in Kiev on YouTube, great video last night, Tatanka smiling. Unbelievable what's going on. Russia shut down in the internet in a lot of places, if not
Well,
almost everywhere. And
we still
Telegram,
have
Yeah, thank God, right?
Thank everybody. Listen, we will discuss next week what happened at the marches. Let's pray for no violence, and let's have a solution to what comes next. Let's hope we get over 10 million. And thank you, MYLA RESON, Dave Saltman, everybody for an incredible 2.5 hours. We'll see you next week at the GREEP calls, and we'll see you at California Solartopia on the Pacifica Radio Network. No nukes, everybody.
No nukes. See safe,
See you
way
next
to
week.
support
Go
the
out and toke
movement.
up. It's 4:20 here in LA.
Put
Time
your
to
solar panels on your head and go march and
yeah, go out.
recharge your batteries and go plug in when you get home.
Absolutely. All right, and let's get on the cannabis broadcast system with Dave Saltman next week. We'll see you all. Take care. Thank you very much.
All
And no
power
nukes.
to the
John
nonviolent
Brakey,
movement.
John Brakey, thanks for coming on. We'll see you next week.
I had to stay for the whole show because it was just getting more interesting.
Well, next week
I got
it'll be
plenty of things I got to get back to.
all right, you
Tomorrow's
guys.
a big day.
Take care.
Later, guys.